My soul swims in darkness. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys Mortal Kombat 11 Noob Saibot. Shadow of the Netherrealm. In life, Noob Saibot was known as Sub-Zero. Unjustly murdered by Scorpion, he was resurrected by Quan Chi and granted power over darkness, but as Quan Chi's slave. Now Quan Chi is dead. Noob Saibot is finally free to reclaim the honor that was stolen from him. Before we get down to details on Noob Saibot, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall does the figure stand. Now, of course, I could just look at this and throw out some magic number, but I can't do that. I won't do that. I'm going to use something a little bit more precise, taking the tape measure of mine and measuring it to the very top of his hooded head, stopping it right there. Noob Saibot stands 7.3 inches in height. We could quickly translate that to centimeters, revealing that the figure is about 18.7 centimeters tall. Because I have the figure with me right now, we can move over Noob Saibot and bring in the likes of Liu Kang, just to give you a comparison of sizes. Their height is about the only thing the two share in common. Colors, of course, do change, as well as the additional sculpting that they put to Noob Saibot's body. Now we'll get a closer look at it in a second. Actually, their height isn't the only thing that the two figures share. They actually come also included with the very same display stand that McFarlane Toys and his team have also released with the other Mortal Kombat figures. A standard circular black display base with one singular peg at the top corner. It's in fact the same stand that we've gotten with also the DC Multiverse figures. What's different though is the fact that instead of DC Multiverse down below, we've got ourselves Mortal Kombat. The figure does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. It would make some sense if they're going to, of course, include a display stand. The idea of not having peg holes on the undersides of his feet would be rather silly. But he does come included with a nice display stand. Always like these. Put that to the side. And though he's not pulling it necessarily from his torso, at least he does in the game, doesn't have that means necessarily as a figure, he comes also included with his hooked sickle. It's got some really nice detailing done to it. It looks like it would be sharp and painful. It would even be more painful if you start slicing you up from the torso. But as you can see, it's got some really nice sculpt as well as some silver paint that they've brushed across it. It is slightly curved, though. I don't even mean just the fact that it's curved this way. You can see it's just slightly warped. There you go. You can see it right there. I'm almost considering even submerging it in hot water just so I can see if I can bend it. I would want to have it maybe a little bit more flat, so it's not like, well, not warped like that. But you can go ahead and take the sickle and you can fit it into his hands. Those hands almost even seem a little bit too big to do the job. You can actually take the sickle, fit it into his hand, and slide it down like that. Sorry, what? Yeah, you can also, yeah. You can also do it in the other hand as well. Slide that into place. The one thing I do like about the hands, as I'm struggling to get there we go. The one thing I do certainly like about the hands is that they don't look like they're deliberately molded to hold something. What I mean by that is because they've extended out the few fingers on the front, it actually also serves to be a gestured hand as well. So whatever hand you actually don't have him holding the weapon with, you could actually just even pose the arm straight out like this, and it doesn't, like I said, look like he's supposed to be holding something. Let's go ahead and take the sickle out of his hand. We'll put that down for the time being. And getting a closer look at Noob Saibot. Does have some really nice looking detailing. Not a very overly bright figure. I don't mean that from a character standpoint or his intellect. He would slice me in half if he heard me say that. But actually the coloring on the figure, the palette is rather dark. Most of it is more either dark black or dark gray. Of course, when we start first with his face, a somewhat familiar looking Sub-Zero head sculpt. Of course, all of it is majority pitch black. I do like the bright white eyes that they painted in there as well, and the gold definitely does accent the nice molding that they put to the mask. One other thing that I also had, not only just the warping on the sickle, but also for his hood. You can see this hood, I really wanted to leave it as I saw it out of the packaging. I didn't want to start going in there and tampering things and writing it off that, you know, when I took it out of the packaging, it was perfectly straight. No, it wasn't perfectly straight. This one side of the flap, I guess, for his hood, curves off to the side. This one kind of curves inward. I'm either going to decide for myself which way I want to have them facing and then maybe take a hairdryer and heat the other side. maybe either bring this one in, or to match it to the other side, maybe just bring this out just a little bit. It's a very, very small gripe. It has more so to do with the fact that they're just using really, really soft plastic. Soft plastic does make up the majority of his hood. It's a little harder, it seems, on the top here, but it gets quite a bit softer as it gets down to the straps here on the front. I'm really, really happy with the head sculpt. Even just the sculpting of just the cowl, the hood, does have some nice detailing done to it as well. It almost has a faux leather look to it. Though the color, again, there's not a lot of big jumps in color where you're going to be seeing a darker color and then right next to a really bright yellow. You're definitely not going to be getting that with Saibot here. It does have some really nice sculpting, though. There's the back of his torso, probably the less interesting of the two sides. You can see all the work that they've done here, and spin it, of course, from the front. I really like this, not only just from the sculpting standpoint, but the fact that they also threw in not just silver, but a dry brush of gold on top of that as well. It's probably a little harder to see, but they've also brushed the same gold along the tipped points of his spiked shoulder pads there as well. So again, even though this guy doesn't have a whole lot of coloring going for his credit, he does have certainly a lot of nice sculpting, and even the things that are pulled back on colors, at least brightness standpoints, you can really see like they've added some really nice additional secondary washes to it. That is something I really do appreciate, because they could easily have just painted that a dark gunmetal gray, written it off, called it a day, and closed up shop. But no, actually, they did go in there and dry brush some additional gold on top of it. So it just does bring a little bit more character to those molds, especially when you see the front skirting here as well. Now, it seems like there's more of that gold sort of tarnished against the gunmetal gray. The skirting here is a softer plastic, which you can lift up and sort of see how it's built underneath. So it's basically just a plug that they've plugged into the torso. I don't want to use the bad word that starts with a G. Okay, I'll say it. Glue. Glue. I probably don't want to take glue and glue that in place, but unfortunately, any bit of movement I find with the figure's legs, especially moving it forward and back, maybe that is one of the reasons why this plug removes so easily. So it just gives a little bit more clearance. But I feel like for this being softer plastic, even if I did glue that in place, this still would be able to freely move on its own. So I might even just glue the plug in, just so it doesn't keep popping out like this, and we're going to see this big noticeable hole there. The detailing done to the skirt really is nice, the lower half of his body. It's torn, it's ripped, it's got holes all in it, and it does have some really nice texturing to it. Small little touches of detail, like for example, little stitch lines sewn up here. I don't know if he would have taken the time and, well, I got a rip on the back of my jacket. I wonder if I should probably sew that up. I don't think he really concerns himself too much with it. But again, for the game designers, I guess they felt the need to add a little bit of wear and tear to his costume. His costume certainly has a lot of wear and tear going for it. And of course, as we get a little bit lower down on the legs, even though, again, just really relegated to black plastic, the molding on it is quite nice. Could there have always been an opportunity to dry brush or add even a secondary coat of paint to even things like the boots? Yeah, of course. There is always an opportunity to add some additional much-needed color. But I think the color palette that they went with, though it's pretty simple in some places, still make the figure look really good. I probably could, if anything, go in there, maybe touch it up a little bit, maybe add a little bit of additional paint. I might not just do that. I might just leave it be. For the figure's articulation, let's have a good closer look at that now. His head does rotate, I want to say, all the way around. One thing that will be a big problem is that, as you'll see it, the hood really hits against the backs, well, not so much the back, but like hits right around here, and it kind of gets hung up. The head does move up, and the head does move down. You think I was fibbing there? I assure you, I did make some effort to actually move it up and down. That's as good as I can get it. The head does move back and forth, so you get a nice little tilt to the head, which I do like. I just wish that the head would be able to move up and down a little bit more so. I mean, you can move it down quite a lot, but when you're getting it up like this, it only goes so far, and after that it stops dead in its tracks. For the arms move forward and back. You can hinge them out. Hinging them out isn't so much of an issue, although you'll hear it. It has almost a locking part to it. It hits to a point, and then just when you think you can't bend it any further, just apply a little bit more pressure. That's not really what you really want to suggest for figure articulation, but it does seem to free up the joint, and he gets almost about a 90-degree angle bend. The only problem I really have with it is the way that they've tracked the joint. Because the bicep swivel is right here, there really isn't giving you a lot of clearance to work with. This arm, I find, can have a little bit flatter to his body. I don't know, for some reason, I can't get this arm here to be flush and flat. It really seems like it's hung up. I've tried heating this up a little bit. I've taken a hairdryer to that area a little bit, but it almost doesn't seem like there's as much to work with here, even though I know it's the exact same joint. If I move the arm up just a little bit, it just seems to me like there's a little less track working here. It's almost as if his arm is a little bit more further inward. Whatever the case may be, I can't get the arm completely flat on this side, and I really don't want to force it to the point where anything is breaking off. No fatalities on these figures. Anyways, he does have the swivel, like I said, in the bicep. Noob Saibot also has a double hinge on the elbow, 1 and 2. The figure does also have this part here swivels, or at least I found on this side, the gauntlet swivels. I don't know if it looks like it's broken. It looks almost like it's detached on the top here. But then when I'm looking at it from this side, it looks like it's almost the same. So for some reason, this swivels a little bit. Could be the case that this got a little bit, maybe broke a little bit. I'm not really sure. Let's certainly hope there's no fatalities. But this part doesn't swivel at all. This part, when I got it out of the packaging, swiveled right away. Maybe I may have to go in there and fix that up a little bit. Anyways, the hands do rotate all the way around. You can hinge them forward and back. Just finished talking about not having fatalities on these figures. Maybe there is something wrong with that gauntlet. It does sit a little more looser than this side right here. Let me know down below if you've had similar issues with yours. Then for the upper torso, it's on a nice ball joint. They've done it in such a way, too, that the top of the torso's sculpting conceals the joint. So you almost don't even see that it's there. And then when you're only rotating it then, do you see that he also has the additional articulation, both in the top, and he also has a secondary ball joint down the bottom here as well. So good range of motion going there. Then for the legs, splitting the legs out, you can also bring the legs forward and back. He has a swivel at the top of the thigh, essentially where it's attached to the ball joint. He does have a double hinge on the knee. He does have articulation, it seems, with the boot being a separate piece. Feet move forward and back. And he also does have not only an ankle pivot, but also Noob Saibot also has toe articulation. Fancy that, toe articulation. Overall, a nice looking figure. Let's go ahead and get the sickle back into his hand. And get him on display here. Probably don't even need myself a display stand, even though he technically does have a display stand and he can use a display stand. His feet seem flat enough that I don't have any problems with the figure falling over. Short of the fact that you can't actually have the sickle pulling out of his torso, which would be a little bit difficult when it comes to the molding element of things. Noob Saibot here ended up turning out to be a really nice looking figure. Due to the character's in-game design, Noob Saibot sacrifices then a little bit of color. He's not going to be the brightest of figures you're going to be putting on the shelf, but luckily, while he does sacrifice some color, he doesn't sacrifice at all sculpting. This figure has some incredible sculpting, and though some of it is a bit hard to see because he's got so many dark colors, blacks, dark grays, silvers, and browns, when you're seeing it up close and personal, and hopefully I did a good enough job of that in the review, you really start to wonder the amount of work and time that they probably put into sculpting all the little nuances that you're going to see on this figure. The figure also does have a lot of posability. The packaging does tout 22 moving parts. Short of me actually taking the time, stopping and okay, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. I'm not going to actually stop and count all the joints, but I showed you the articulation that the figure's capable of doing so that, yeah, you can put him in some pretty cool looking in-game poses. He does have some problems, I noticed, at least on my figure, it may not be on everybody's, that he had some difficulty on one shoulder. It's strange that he only had it on one shoulder, almost as if like his arm joint was sticking too far into the socket, which I'm sure isn't the case. I'm just going to have to fight a little bit more, I think, to get that arm socket to loosen up a little bit. He does also have a little bit of limitations when it comes to moving his head. Other than that, though, the figure has some incredible looking sculpt, incredible looking detail, and some pretty good articulation going for him as well. This is one of my favorite of the Mortal Kombat figures that we've looked at here on this channel. If you're a big fan of Mortal Kombat and Noob Saibot, you may want to pick this one up and add it to your collection as well. Today we were having a look at the Mortal Kombat 11 Noob Saibot, complete with its sickle, a slightly crooked sickle, came included with the sickle nonetheless. If you guys are new to this channel, enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. Make sure as well you're keeping your peepers peeled to this channel, because even though we have wrapped up the review on this figure and fighter from Mortal Kombat, I will tell you there will be some Mortal Kombat reviews up and coming to this channel, so make sure again you're coming back to this channel on a regular basis. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.